Here we go. Welcome. Today we get to learn a little bit about Photoshop. And basically Photoshop we use for more still images, and we're looking at producing some GIFs from some JPEGs, and then also, so we're going to alter a photograph like the grapes you see in front of you, and then we're also going to create a new text file from scratch and just show you how you can make some kind of cool images you can put into web pages and into different formats, PowerPoints, whatever the case might be. Let's start with having you open this picture of the grapes. If you say File, Open, you go all the way to the Share Drive. You go into the Wolbert folder for your hour, into the Photoshop folder. You go into within Photoshop the Images folder, and you'll find Grapes and Seagulls. Well, right now you need the grapes. If you can open that. Now you should be staring at the grapes, and let's go ahead and before we even do anything else, say Image, Duplicate. What this does, you'll say grapes copy, say, oh, okay, we'll do the copy. And notice you have two different files up. I want you to go back to the original grapes JPEG and close it, please. That way you don't try to override the original. And we're just going to work on the copy. Let's go ahead and resize this because notice it's only at 66.7% right now. But we want to go ahead and resize. To start with, we're going to say Image, Image Size. And notice that it's pretty big. It's 6 inches by 5.5 inches. Now, as we do this, you want to make sure that you constrain the proportions. What that means is, watch, if I change this width to say 500, it's going to just adjust the height accordingly so it doesn't distort the picture. So go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and change that to a width of 500. And let's say OK. Now this tells us this is 66.7% again. Now let's say View. And if you want to see the actual pixels, how big it is. But then, of course, you'd have to resize the window to see the whole thing. Or you just say View, my favorite, Fit on Screen or Control-0. There you go. Now I can really work with it, even though I'm at 123%. Now, we've gone ahead and viewed. Now let's talk about what these windows are. Obviously, you have your menu bar up here. This is your options bar, and it is extremely important, especially since no matter what tool you select, like this is your toolbox. If I start over here and it says elliptical marquee, I press it down, press and hold. There's the rectangular, elliptical, single row, single column. We just basically work with the first two, though. If you could just choose, since it's grapes, the elliptical marquee, and you'll see that all these tools up here become active for the elliptical marquee. Now, if we go to the Move tool, for example, look, the options bar changes strictly for options available with that tool. So let's go back and keep it on the elliptical marquee for now, and we'll get back to that. Just want to introduce you to the screen. Obviously, this is your main window. Now let's go over to what's called palettes on the far right side. By the way, if ever you lose your palettes and can't figure it out how to get them back, like let's suppose I accidentally, my navigator's gone, I can go to Window, and I can go to Workspace and say, I want to reset my palettes, and it just brings it all back for you. That happens sometimes. We do these oopses. But the navigator, notice, basically it's full window, and if you take the little zoom slider, and you go back and forth, you can see this is an easy way to zoom. All right. And also, if you're just working with a portion of it, you'll see later how we will be selecting portions. It will show what portion you're selecting in the window. Let's go down to the next palette, which is the color palette. Notice the very first tab says color. And for example, this is the foreground color. If you point to it, it tells you. And this says set the background color. It's the same foreground and background color as we have over here on our toolbar. Now, I have a green set right now. why don't you go ahead and do that. Click and go to the green swatch and choose some type of nice green that you think might be a good background color behind the grapes. Okay, I think now if you get a little triangle, that means that your colors are not within the color range for printing. So you click the triangle and it'll show you a color that is within range for printing. Say OK, and I hit my green swatch. If I wanted to change my background color, again, you just click the box, choose your color, double click the box. Let's suppose I wanted a yellow right now. Fine. Click my gamut warning, say OK. So I have green and yellow, just like what is here in the picture. You also have swatches tab, and you also have a styles tab. Now this is pretty cool, and you'll be using this in your exercise. In particular, you will be using the chiseled sky, and that I walk you through how to use, but basically you make a layer and you just paint it on with your paint bucket over here. You just click it and it becomes that part of it. For now, we're going to be leaving the colors. Go back to the color. Let's go to our history palette. This is awfully cool. Notice we did the duplicate of the image. We could actually undo that image size and duplicate, and we could get it back. So this is basically our undo button. Yes, you can still have an edit undo, but it only does one undo. This history, you'll be able to undo 20 or so actions. If you go into your options, you can even set it for more. And so you just keep it going. This is the original one, or you could go back in time. Now this last palette, this is our baby. This is the layers palette. The only one you have to be concerned about, the only tab, is the tab layers. Notice that the grape is on what's called the background layer, but there's a little lock. It says it's locked. We don't want it locked because we're going to add some special effects. So we want to double click, click the background. Go ahead and do that right now, please. Because one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, you don't want to just be watching this. You want to be doing it with me. So if you haven't opened the grape file yet, why, George, open it up and double click that background layer and let's get busy. I'm still going to type it. I'm just going to call this grapes because this is the main picture with the grapes. And I'm going to say OK. So I just renamed my layer. And again, if I want to rename it again, I just double click and then click off. That easy. Now at the bottom of your layers palette, this is pretty important. If I wanted to delete the layer, well, I can't delete my only layer. So that's why your little trash can here is not selected. If I wanted to make a new layer, this is cool. You just create it here. In fact, let's go ahead and do that a little bit later. We will. And this is another button you're going to have to become familiar with, layer styles. So again, we'll skip it for now. Opacity, if I wanted to change how transparent these grapes are, I could click here, and let's just for now, so you can see what I'm talking about, take it to like 50%. There you go. And basically, you see checkerboards. That doesn't really show up in the picture. It just shows like 50% of the strength of the picture. Okay, let's put it back up to 100. We want to see those beautiful grapes. Who's hungry? I'm getting there. And keep it at that. Now, let's go over to the toolbar. Very quickly, I have to address some of the items on the toolbar. I want you, please, to go ahead and just really zoom in on this toolbar. In order to do that, you could choose your zoom tool if you wanted to. There's a minus, and then if you hold Alt, there's a plus. You know, so it does both. Zooms in, zooms out. There's also, if you look here, I want to zoom in. I want to zoom out. It's right up on the options palette too. Or notice over in your navigator, you can move with the hand where in the picture you would like to zoom. So let's suppose we're going to focus in on one of these grapes here, and we wanted this big one here, and we want to get that puppy selected. I'm going to click the plus sign on my options bar, zoom in a little bit more, get that big grape, and then I'm going to take my elliptical marquee, press and hold. How did I know I could hold it? Because there's a little notch in the corner. Anything that has a notch, any tool, there's additional tools underneath that one not showing up. Okay, then I just grab and drag. Now this is weird, but I'm going to hold down my space bar to move it over. and then continue. I release my space bar, continue dragging, and voila, I have one part of a grape selected. Wonderful. Now watch, if I hit delete, it would actually take it out of the picture for me. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go into my history. I'm going to undo that, and I have it back. Also notice this changed, the options bar changed because I have an elliptical marquee selected. If I want to move this selection, notice I get a little arrow with a box, and I can actually just move the selection. I wonder if the same thing's going to happen, since it's a selection, if I click on my Move tool. Watch what's going to happen now. It moves the whole thing, not just where the circular selection is. So again, the Move tool will actually move what's inside the selection. Otherwise, you can just move the selection itself by clicking on the tool. All right, I'm going to undo that move. I'm going to deselect. To do that, you can say select, deselect, or my favorite, Control D. Okay? So no longer do we have it selected. Now you've learned your marquee and your move tool. Let's go to our magnetic lasso and just see what that's going to do for us. We have a lasso, which is just freehand. Go ahead and just draw a circle. It's freehand. You got to begin it, you got to end it. Now hit Control D to deselect that. Now try something else. Your polygonal lasso, you're going to see that when you click, 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 it does irregular shapes. But watch, oops. Okay, let me do that again. I accidentally double clicked. You have to click the ending to make the selection. So I had to click over here. You try it. Go ahead and play with the polygonal lasso for a minute. Deselect, Control D. Finally, the magnetic lasso is another way to make a selection. I'm going to go around this grape, but watch, as I hold down, it kind of adheres to the edge of the grape, and I just pull it around. And then I double click, and I end the selection. And notice this changes again, for the options change. And your frequency of your points and your contrast of where it finds the points, this all matters in terms of how well it selects. So you may have to adjust these sometimes to get your selection really good with the magnetic lasso. Deselect. This is a very cool tool. This is called your magic wand. Now when you point to it, it selects by color. Watch. Now what's important though is the tolerance. The higher the tolerance, the more the color range. If I just click here, notice I can just click now. It's going to add, there's new selection. This is going to add to it, subtract to it, and intersect it. So if I keep clicking in this area, because I have the add to, it'll keep adding to the selection of the grape color. And then I can kind of get some grapes the same color. Okay, so that's what it selected for me. Now watch, however, deselect. If you change your tolerance to like 50, oh boy, you wait. Now click over with your magic wand and see how much it selects. It expands the selection even more. Control D that, put the tolerance back down pretty low. Maybe even just 15 is fine. Okay, now what if I wanted to crop this picture? That's the next thing we're going to do. Click on crop, and you actually are going to crop this. So I need you to say View, Fit on Screen. Fit it on the screen. Then I want you just to select, similar to what I'm going to select. I don't want as much of the white showing, but I want some of this deep grape color over here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this area. Notice I really leveled up some of my grape area. Then I have a little check mark here that says commit. Once I can move this if I want. I can say, oh, I want some of this. I want it to end here. Maybe not so much over here. You can adjust it. Then click and commit. And now that is your new image. Of course, if you didn't like it, you can undo it. But this is what we have for now. This is our new picture that will show up. Okay, now the next toolbar that I really need to show you is the brush. If ever you need to just brush something on, you have to change the size of the brush once in a while due to the picture. But that's how to do it. If ever you need to erase something like this white background, because we want it transparent, so when we put it on a website, if the background of the website is, let's say, black, it won't show a white top. It'll show it black with just the grapes. we would have to choose the magic eraser. This is the normal eraser. This is press and hold, your background eraser. But believe it or not, the magic eraser is kind of like the magic wand. It chooses according to color. So everybody choose your magic eraser right now, please. Now go up to the white section only on the picture and click it. Now notice it appears that it deleted it all, but if you click it again, aha, it got even lighter. Sometimes, click it again, you want it to be completely transparent. You may have to go to different white sections and just keep clicking it till you're 100% positive that all the white area will indeed, that there won't even be a sheen there of white. Okay, it appears as though it's completely transparent, which is what we wanted. So in a moment, we'll be using this next tool, which is the paint bucket. Before we use the paint bucket, let's go down to our layers palette, this magical layers palette. Go to the bottom and say, click on New Layer. Here we go. Go up to the layer and click it and say Background. So you double click and rename the layer. Now notice if we take, notice the background layer is currently on top of grapes. So can you guess what's going to happen? Layers are like an onion. You can, if something completely solid is on top of the next layer, you won't be able to see through it, right? So what we need to do, I'll show you, is you go to the paint bucket. I want you to get, if it's not selected, not the gradient, but the normal paint bucket, you still have your green already selected. Now we're on the background layer. This is important, not the grape layer, the background layer. Now click. Notice the entire background layer turns green, but all we can see is green. So what do you think we have to do? How can we get the grapes to show up? We have background layer, grape layer. You are right. We must flip-flop the layers. Let's go ahead and grab the background layer, grab it, hold down your left mouse, and drag it underneath the grape layer. Reverse the order of the two layers, and voila! You have the grapes, and beneath it, your background green shows up. Now let's say we didn't want the green to show up. Well, we can go over to the eye on the layers, go to your eye, punch it out. That's the show hide. So we hid the background layer for now. But that's how we do it. What if we wanted the background? We like it, but we think it's a little too dark of a green. Again, you can change your opacity, maybe take it to a lighter. You could even make it a 25. You can't see as much, but it's a very light 25. But what if you want to put it on a web page and you want these grapes to have the same, the white part of the grapes to have the same background as a web page? Again, full opacity on this, punch the eye out. And let's suppose we decide we absolutely don't need this layer after all. Okay, we'll go down to the trash bin, make sure your background layer is selected, and click, and say yes to delete. So now we just have the grape layer left. It looks like we're doing great. Now, the last thing, before I give you a slight pause in the video here, is I would like you to save this as a GIF for the web. So let's go ahead and do that. So you do File, not Save As, but Save for the web. Go for it. Save for the web. Now notice you have to see these checkerboards in order to know it's going to do it. And it gives you what it considers to be the absolute optimized version. Here's the original optimized. And you want to save it as a GIF, otherwise known as a GIF, because that's the optimized file format. And it's the only one, a JPEG, which is for actually pictures. It's a higher quality. You can't choose a JPEG if you want a transparent background. You can only choose the GIF. You want this to be, the color reduction to be on selective. We don't really need the dithering at this point, but we do want transparent checked. Hopefully you did File Save for Web and you're doing this with me. Also, the diffusion transparency is best. Don't choose the pattern or the noise, or you might see markings actually in the white section, like a little pattern marking. So, and interlace just means that if you have a bigger file or bigger file size for the image, that it will download with multiple passes. So as the page is loading, you'll see a portion of the picture coming up instead of the picture just wah, all coming up at once. So it's fine to have it interlaced. Finally, you click Save. And I'd like you to go, please, to your H drive, within your web design, within your Photoshop, and within Photoshop, if you could make an images folder, please. And I'd like you, please, to just save it as grapes underline GIF. So the way you're saving this is grapes underline GIF. Just like this. Now it's true that it's going to do a .gif, but this is just so you can remember that this is a GIF file. Just merely click Save and continue on. Okay. Now, we're done with that. I'm going to give you a slight pause. You can go ahead and just for a minute pause the video if you need. Stretch your neck, whenever you need to do. But the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a text file from scratch.